coming live to you from the pages of the Deep Space and Dragons weekly magazine, which exists as a podcast, and you cannot get an actual magazine. I'm Richard.
I am Karl, in this magazine brought to life.
You know, I was trying for a whole metaphor thing to ease into our episode title, and I think I botched it. We are a podcast. You are listeners. You can also tune in on YouTube. But I have a fan question coming in for you, and it coming in pretty hot. So before I ask what's new with Karl, how is Operation Sandblaster?
Operation Sandblaster has been put on hold due to the deep freeze that hit Western Canada.
That is very fair. So, pivoting off that, what's new in this weekly's update of Karl Jump?
So as of the time of this recording, we're relatively close to the new year, and one of my coworkers gave me a cigar to celebrate the new year. This is kind of a weird thing to receive because I've never smoked with cigarettes in my life.
Hashtag smoking with cigarettes. Please continue.
But I mean, I figured I would give it a try because he bought me this cigar. Apparently, and I would have messed this up, and probably had a really horrible experience. But unlike marijuana smoke or tobacco smoke or cigarette smoke in general, you're not actually supposed to inhale cigar smoke. You're just supposed to swish it around in your mouth a little bit and get the flavor, and then exhale most of it without actually inhaling it, because it's apparently far more tarry than cigarettes. I kind of got sick of the flavor super quick, but the first couple puffs on the cigar were actually fairly tasty. And I can definitely imagine, if you had a little a smoking room and you just had the cigar in the ashtray, and I mean, it's not going to be good for you, but it would be an enticing and aromatic atmosphere to I don't know, read books or have chats and drinks or whatever. I can see why the olden days people like to smoke cigars and sit around and chat and stuff.
Yeah, to follow up on that, back in my scandalous youth, I did enjoy cherry cigars once upon a time because I'm classy like that. So, I can see the theory, and even though the world has pivoted away because science agrees that smoking is bad for you, pretty much, although I'm not really sure what train of logic was needed to disprove that. You know when you do something that tastes awful, makes you feel ill, the first time you do it, you vomit? I'm not really sure what the counter-argument was for doing this thing.
I don't know much about the history of cigars or cigarettes. I assume that tobacco was originally some sort of religious herb used for rituals and stuff, but I don't know.
Alright, so, with that funness out of the way, there's no sandblaster because of the Great Freeze, where now all sand has been turned into a solid clump, or baking soda. Basically, any powder will immediately become a solid when exposed to the harsh Saskatchewan environment.
Yeah, it was absurd. But so, what's new with you, Richard?
So, my current course is we're doing up screenplays in one of my classes, we're doing up unedited manuscripts in another, so I'm doing a lot of writing, as you would expect. But as for my non-writing hobbies, which I'm sure exist, I felt the need to actually make a venture outside today, so we went for Krispy Kreme donuts. And there's always that option of we could sit comfortably in the car for 3 hours through this very slow lineup, or we can stand and endure the cold. But what's funny is, so for my time spent in Saskatchewan, most of my nerve endings are dead when it comes to cold temperatures, at least in comparison to my East Coast contemporaries. So there's always a situation where my girlfriend is worried I'm cold. It's like, oh, get on your gloves, put on a toque. Literally zipping up my jacket because it's not zipped up all the way in her protective way. And I'm like, first off, inside my coat pockets, because I'm so used to nearly dying from the cold, I have a scarf, I have a toque, I have 2 sets of gloves. I have winter gear that lives in my coat because I'm used to having to survive going to work and it being 0 outside, the sun setting and it being minus 30, and my eyes freezing shut.
True story.
Like, this is when I learned that chef pans make great snow pans, because if they're fire resistant, maybe they can keep some of your heat from leaching out. Like, a lot of our listeners don't know that feeling of if you don't have, like, something covering a piece of exposed skin, you can feel the heat leach out like vapor. Like, you can feel...
Just as a little side note, I have a coworker who was from the Philippines.
Oh, no.
And he told me that when he moved here, he didn't even know that things went into the negatives. Like, the coldest it gets there is like 4 degrees, and they thought that was the apocalypse.
No. It's so deeply tragic. Like, in my kitchen days, we had a lot of temporary or permanent foreign workers from the Philippines, and they would just think we were insane. Like, are we trying to die? Like, for example, there's just scenes of, like, here's what the hollow world looks like in Bleach, of a white sand desert, and that's just the field behind my house that used to be a blank field before the snow hit, that has literally become a wasteland full of demons. So needless to say, it's -10 today, and I was fine waiting in a lineup for donuts. With no negative repercussions whatsoever. People like to say the damp cold is colder, and there are people who aren't used... The thing is, that's true to a certain extent. Like, I think -5 here is colder than -5 there. But when you hit the point where the molecules slow down and start turning into Bose-Einstein condensate, and states of matter are no longer an applicable situation to have, then it might not matter that the warm or dry or the wet cold is different, because your matter no longer can maintain certain states, because it's that freaking cold there.
It definitely, it was definitely like, it was a really nice mild winter, and then suddenly, boom, deep freeze. Like, it was -40 for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, I kind of got lucky where the campus is staying remote only till March, and at one hand, going onto the beautiful campus, interacting with smiling, I assume under the mask, students for a couple days a week, has been shown to have very positive mental health. You get sunlight, you get life. But I'm fine just skipping February. Just to frack with that month. That can go right to Hondo Muko. I don't need it.
Speaking of going to Hondo Muko, I believe that our topic for this week is what's new in the Shonen Jump magazine/app.
Absolutely.
Hashtag not spawned.
I mean, yes. So, to give just a little backstory. So Shonen Jump has a complex history in North America. At one point, they're a monthly magazine that people would pillage for trading cards because the Yu-Gi-Oh cards inside were worth more than the magazine. Then everyone started fan subtitling and pirating because no one's going to wait a month for 6-year-old Naruto chapters. But somewhere between the days of the Wild Wild West and One Manga and MangaReader.com, Shonen Jump realized they should just be an app like everybody else. And now it's free and easy to read things that are actually translated by professionals, rather than exploring the Wild Wild West that was fan translations, which could just have random slices of pornography in the middle of a chapter. That happened to me once, because it was basically the Bay of Pirates, but for books.
Well, and also sometimes translators, the translators would drop the project, or they don't have enough money, or couldn't get the raws, and so then you would have translation errors between chapters, where it's like the Sharingan would be called one thing in the first chapter, and then...
The spinning disc guy.
Yeah, spinning disc guy.
So another thing that also is, I'm a professional writer, so support writers by the official media, make sure your sources go to the creators, all that rationale for why you should do it on the official app. Because there's that certain irony that I just can't in good conscience pirates books anymore. But 16-year-old me was just a rebel without a cause, lost in the wills of life, and I needed my It's funny, lots of students in my program would be like, yeah, I've read hundreds of books. I'm like, same. Mine were graphic novels. I've probably read more lines of text than people who have been conquered like Greek poetry and finished the Iliad, but I read it by rereading Naruto 6 times in its 1,000 chapter glory. But let's get into the individual reviews. So first, as we were discussing a bit pre-stream, right now, the landscape of Shonen Jump breaks into 4 categories, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Category the first, things that have been Actually, yeah, category of the first, things that want to be Bleach.
Okay.
Category
that's
of the
fair.
second, things that want to be One Punch Man.
Also fair.
Category of the third, things that want to be comedies but aren't funny.
Yeah, okay.
And category of the fourth, things that are still running from back before I had a Shonen Jump app.
Oof. I mean, you have to help me categorize a few of these sorts of things, because, like, I mean, for one, I think that Spy X Family is not really any of those categories, because I think it actually is genuinely funny and endearing.
So, starting off in no particular order with Spy X Family, which has been going for, what chapter is it on about? Because pretty much every 52 chapters means it's been going for X number of years, if we're using math, Jabra.
So, okay, let's just look up Spy. Because it's a monthly series, so it has 73 chapters.
Okay, so it's been going for a few years now.
Yeah, it has actually been going for a few years. That's actually pretty crazy.
Yeah, a lot of these mangas, you don't realize how long they're going because you're checking it up. And I will say, Spy X Family is kind of amusing, because I really like the anime Full Metal Panic, even though they made sure to give me robots and things. The more civilian elements of being a highly trained professional adapting to everyday life does amuse me. It's also in the weird category of not unfilmable. If Netflix were to try and make a live-action Spy X Family, it is possible.
And I really, like I say, it's very wholesome, but then at the same time, it still has, like, these incredible,
some
like, action sequences, and yeah, it has punch to it for sure.
Yeah, I would say I would rate it 4 out of 5 Exodia pieces. It doesn't instantly win the game, but you're in pretty good shape.
I mean, one of the things that it has that it kind of goes for it and against it is the fact that it is monthly. Because creating weekly content is incredibly difficult to maintain the quality. And so going monthly, it can give all of its ideas time to breathe. But when you compare it to Sakamoto Days, which almost has the exact same idea, this, like, you know, you have this super assassin who has a psychic friend and a super powerful female character that can beat people up.
So, tipping into Sakamoto Days, which firmly falls in the One Punch Man category of my main character's so super powerful, it's not feasible for them to lose a fight, but that's not really what they're about. That is not, like, a concern or a priority of theirs.
But Sakamoto Days and Spy X Family share a lot of really similar elements and ideas. The psychic powers, the like I said, the strong female character, but it's running through its ideas a lot more quickly, and so, like, it doesn't have as much time to settle on the daily life of Sakamoto. And so then when there was this latest chapter where the villain threatened his family, it's like, well, you know, lately we haven't really seen any of his family. I don't actually see any of the endearment that he has towards his children. It's his children, so he's angry.
It's his motivation rather than a plot point. And I'm going to agree, one of the problems Sakamoto Days is falling into, which I've dubbed Bleach Syndrome, which will probably come up later, is you start when you're doing a weekly series, and this definitely happens more in weekly rather than monthly, unless you're Dragon Ball Super. You're like, I've introduced X number of characters, and I need to put out content weekly. Well, the easiest thing you can do is trill out your characters. Where once you've introduced 5 or 6 characters and introduced 5 or 6 villains, each week you just go pair up one of those 2 groups and have them do a dramatic fight sequence.
Right.
Which gives you content, but it doesn't actually advance the plot. You don't have to write any actual script. Once you've established, I am Ice Guy with ice powers, or when I get drunk I punch real good, and I'm like, I'm covered in stitches and have sewing powers. You just have sewing person fight ice person, drunk person fight other person, and then once you've made it through these 10 or so fights, you can then forward the plot, and you've successfully bought yourself some breathing room without actually having to write anything. Because you've already written what these characters do, you're now just letting them interact.
Yeah, so like Sakamoto Days is definitely interesting read. It's kind of getting a little bit too serious for my taste, but I'm invested, so I'm probably am gonna read it to, well,
Let's keep going.
I don't know.
So to follow up on that, one thing I am going to give it, because originally I'd give it 3 Exodia pieces, but earns it its 4th Exodia piece, is they start with the bad habit in Japanese manga of let's fat shame the fat guy because it's funny that they're fat. And I hate that trope because, human beings have body types. But in a more recent plot arc, they're like, well, your original plan was to lose a bunch of weight, but instead you need to learn how to use your weight and use your body type. Be fat. We believe in you. So I'm giving it an Exodia piece for mentioning that a character's just allowed to be fat, rather than the anime trope of shredding all their fat instantly to be Chris Pratt. Because the last thing we need is people like, I like Chonky Thor, and I think if Chonky Thor got struck by lightning and got 6-pack abs again, I'd be less on board with Chonky Thor. And with that pivot, let's go into Me and Roboco, a series that I saw the title art and gave 0 Exodias and did not open.
Well, I mean, so the Shonen Jump app has a little thing where it's like jump into a new series. And I have actually given most of these series they tell me to jump into a try. So Me and Roboco, I did read the first chapter. And I don't know where it can go because it just is a fat joke.
So I took its 1 Exodia piece and gave it to Sakamoto Days so it can be at 0 Exodia pieces. You don't even have an opening hand.
Because the plot of Me and Roboco is that the people have androids that are like maids and stuff for their houses. And the one kid, he's too poor to get a really good one, so he gets one that's fat.
Yeah, that's just a terrible joke. But let's move on to the next One Punch Man in Shonen Jump. One Punch Man. What are your thoughts on One Punch Man? So good, but so bad.
So, like, One Punch Man has a huge problem with the Bleach syndrome, as you say, which is weird because it's based on a webcomic, and the webcomic is substantially further ahead in the story. But there's so many heroes fighting so many villains, and then it has its chaotic release schedule. But one of the things that confuses me the most is the piracy, because I'm really invested in the series because like strange eldritch horrors are starting to show up, and this character Blast that has been mentioned to be like the most powerful hero, but he's never there, and he's actually finally shown up and he's like, yeah, I'm fighting these eldritch like beings, so see you guys later. So the piracy, like the people who the fan translations are always one chapter ahead of the Shonen Jump app for some reason.
So to follow up on that, so for One Punch Man, my problem with it is they had a 12-episode series that summed the first chunk of manga, or I actually don't know how that order went, to be honest, because it might have went webcomic, anime, manga. I'm not really sure how it rolled out. But the character arc of I'm Saitama, I'm a hero for fun, but I became so super powerful I end every fight in one punch, becomes a professional hero, realizes the day-to-day monotony, other professional heroes who are in it for money try and shame him, he blows up an asteroid, he's like, I'm not in it for money, I'm here to be awesome, has an epic battle with a space alien god, defeats him in one punch, the guy proclaims prophecies are bullshit, ship crashes, end of series. It was done. They were good. You could have just called it there, because the core joke that your main character ends every fight in one punch. You can only do so much with it, because he gave him the character arc that he's super undervalued and unappreciated because no one believes him. And
well, okay, yeah. Just to kind of a tangent on that though, they have kind of pivoted into some other jokes which I actually do find incredibly amusing, and that is One Punch Man has throughout the series accidentally saved one of the characters who is now named King, and the Hero Association believes that King is the most powerful hero out there because he's the only one who's been around after Saitama one punches all these monsters, and they're like, oh, this guy must be the guy that did it. But he is just actually a lowly weak human. He may have some sort of like luck superpower. I don't know. But I have been consistently amused by how they have portrayed King as being this weak, meaningless character, and then the accidental ways that he's trying to say one thing and it just works out for him. Like this clone kid comes up to him and King is like, yeah, you should find another hero because and in King's mind he's like, yeah, I'm just a useless human, but he's just like, yeah, go find someone else. And then it just scares the monster so bad that they can't hold their form anymore and they just melt.
The thing is, if it wasn't having Bleach Syndrome right now, where every character needed to specifically have a one-on-one duel with a villain, and it didn't take 4 years to tell what would probably be 3 chapters of a novel, I'd be much more on board. But because it's released so infrequently, so slowly, and they animate every punch of every single fight in the manga with an artist who's way better than the story in One Punch Man deserves, to be completely honest. They're got one of the best artists I've probably ever seen draw manga. To make a bald joke is fantastic. But the problem with One Punch Man is it's taking so long to get somewhere that it's almost undercutting itself, and its singular joke has worn so thin that they've had to rely on a full cast out of My Hero Academia to round out the roster. And the more characters we have from My Hero Academia rounding out the roster, the less Saitama we get, who is the thing that makes it unique.
Well, One Punch Man would probably be my favorite series if I could read it from start to finish.
And with that,
it's so incredibly frustrating that it's released so infrequently, and knowing that for whatever reason the pirates are one chapter ahead always.
And to follow up with that, we get to My Hero Academia, which you haven't been following as closely as me, so I'm going to give it a quicker summary, but it's been going for 350 chapters, so that's a fair number of years it's been going. It was originally Shonen Jump for a while was like Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach are the big 3. They're the series that are carrying this magazine, and almost everything in it since has been one of those 3, or occasionally One Punch Man somehow. But My Hero was effectively it was basically the plot of X-Men given an anime, which was good, but as you mentioned, they tried to be too serious and too dark and strayed away from the classroom aspect of it, which was weirdly the most compelling part, with these characters interacting and growing up to be superheroes. But then they went Naruto Great Ninja War and threw them into the front lines. And My Hero Academia is actually lower on my list. Oh, I forgot. One Punch Man gets 5 stars gets 5 pieces of Exodia when Saitama shows up. That's my official rating on it.
That is a fair rating. I would give it probably 3 Exodia pieces when King shows up, because he is there are 2 jokes in that series and they kind of are intertwined with each other, but I think that the King joke is solid.
The third joke, by the way, is that Genos keeps going and being an actual Shonen Jump protagonist and then gets just owned. But yeah, My Hero Academia is sitting at about 3.5 pieces of Exodia, like 3 Exodia pieces in a fiber jar. But the spin-off that comes out monthly called My Hero Academia Vigilantes is actually better.
Oh, really?
It only follows 4 characters, so it doesn't have Bleach Syndrome of we have a 20-character entire student roster. And these 4 characters are 2 college-age kids. One of them wanted to go to the My Hero Academia Hero exam, but instead missed the entrance exam because he was fishing someone out of the river, and now is just in general studies at college. But he secretly is a vigilante doing mundane hero work, like picking up garbage and sleeping in the streets.
Okay.
And he's doing this vigilante work to blow off steam from his college life. Like, sometimes he wants to feel like he's actually making a difference. And then he gets picked up by Knuckle Duster, who's basically Batman, like actual new superpowers, but jacked grappling hooks punches people, who basically enlists him to be his sidekick to help him clean up the streets. He's like, hey, you want to be a hero? Follow me. Here's how you correctly fall into trash. From a roof to not break your neck. And then the third character is just someone who wants to use their superpower to put on concert performances, which is technically illegal because you can't use your superpowers without a license.
Right.
It's up to 118 chapters, and I've been really enjoying it, partly because the protagonist's motivations of it's like the classic motivation of you wanted to go to school to do X, and you have this idea of doing X, and then you're not able to do it because there's like, yeah, that's not a real career, you can't get in. And then he's in his early 20s trying to make it work after the fact. That hits me where I am, being 30 and back in school right now. I get the idea that you want to be a superhero, didn't make it into hero school, but are now trying to like do it on the side to feel good about yourself. I get that. That's pretty good. I'd give it a solid 4 Exodia pieces.
Speaking of character motivations, it's a little bit early to be able to give it any Exodia pieces. It's pretty low on the list right now. But the Ayashimon is a weekly series that only has 8 chapters or 9 chapters. I think it's the latest one that came out.
Exactly One Punch Man and Bleach. Somehow being 2 out of 4.
But I'm not sure how I feel about the character motivation because it's a manga. And the character's motivation is that he wants to be the protagonist of a manga. And
the setting is just Bleach.
Yeah, the setting is just Bleach. Well, a gangster Bleach because he's like fighting Yakuza demons.
You don't get to call it gangster Bleach because that sounds really cool and I want to see that.
Well, I mean, it has some cool ideas. Like, this is probably not unique to the series, but the idea that the demons take corporeal form and their bodies are made of money.
That just sounds like an amazing idea to make a Dokapon Kingdom sequel, which we'll someday have the resources to do. But yeah, it's too early for me to give any pieces as well, as it's only on chapter 7 or 9? Chapter 9. And the thing is, I am curious to see where it goes, so he's still waiting to draw his opening hand and see what we got. But it could be pretty good. But it's definitely in the I'm a Bleach category, which moves us to the next one. They did a one-shot of Bleach, so that's just back in the manga. And I just can't rate that.
I wonder if they did that one-shot of Bleach to see to gauge fan reaction to new Bleach content before they decided to release the new season of Bleach.
And with that, we move to the next Bleach, Dororon, which answers an age-old question. What if we took the plot of Bleach and replaced the cliche damsel in distress sidekick you give every protagonist in an anime, and instead gave him an adorable, quite possibly the cutest mascot in Shonen Jump?
Just the cutest little Gastrodon.
So fantastic. Like when he turns into a sword, he still has his adorable eye, or when he turns into a bag, and he just wants to make the world a better place. He's not fighting other demons as a demon because of some vendetta or angst, no, he's just cute and people are good and he wants to help out people. And the protagonist is like, oh man, I want to be an edgy manga protagonist, but this Gastrojon has just made his way into my heart, and I love him now. And we're going to fight and kill demons so we get a paycheck so we can go to instant noodles, go to expensive ramen together. So, if it weren't for the Gastrodon, it'd be 2 Exodia pieces, but the sidekick / sword is worth 2 Exodia pieces as a character by himself. Because I can't think of a single manga in this magazine that wouldn't gain an Exodia piece for having him as a secondary character.
And this is actually an interesting contrast to the other new series, the Ayashimon that we just mentioned, because Dororon is also only on like chapter 8 or 9. But that Gastrodon, when you read it, if you read it, and I suggest that you do. Listeners, that is.
Yeah.
It's so adorable, and it looks like it's going to be this like.
It is just straight up
relationship between the two main characters, the two protagonists, combined with like eldritch horror of the first season of Bleach.
It's kind of funny because they're like, we're just going to do Bleach. Well, how will we fix it? We'll put Mooncake in it. And Mooncake is too pure for this world and can carry any show, no matter how bad the other characters are, on his adorable knot shoulders. Also, the Gastrodon's name is Kusanagi because he's a magic sword. It's just, levels. So, moving on from that to the third Bleach of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is, let's do Bleach, but let's just add in Naruto for good measure because we want to make money.
Jujutsu Kaisen is kind of a strange one because it also had it had this fairly long plot arc, which felt like it concluded with the villain winning. And then when the next arc started, it felt like that entire 100 chapters or however many chapters it was just set up for this weird sorcerer tournament.
And that's the thing is, they're literally just picking and choosing. It's like, okay, what do we like about Bleach? Ghost monsters that people can see and magic swords turning into darkness bubbles. Cool, what do we like in Naruto? Chunin exams and ninja schools. Well, why can't we have both? So it's literally just Naruto plus Bleach playing polymerization. But the anime has a $14 billion budget, so the anime is actually just a 4-star or 4 Exodia pieces just because of production value alone.
Mm-hmm.
But the series itself sits at a humble 2. I'm much more invested in Sakamoto, which is unfortunate because Jujutsu Kaisen's probably better from empirical measurements, but it's just done so much I've seen before.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I mean, Shonen Jump does have a target audience and a style that they go for.
But that doesn't mean you can't exceed in that style.
Well, I mean, that's true. I mean, unfortunately, I guess I haven't really looked into it, but I mean, there's other mangas, magazines that could have some interesting content. Would whatever magazine published Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, that's not in Shonen Jump, but tune in the future to hear us talk about that incredible coming of age story.
Agreed. But to stay on topic, to try and get through the rest of this magazine.
We can't possibly make it through this entire magazine.
Hey, we got 3 more things I want to hit.
Okay.
So first thing we need to briefly go over is Mashle, which they just took One Punch Man and made it Harry Potter. How many stars do you give it? That's the only description it needs, right?
Oh, I love MASH, and I love that they actually just consistently follow him on his quest. He is the main character, and he is in... I think chapter. He's only missed 1 or 2 chapters,
he was in the fridge. He was still there.
Well, even then, it was he was in the fridge, but he still had a couple panels where he's like, huh, this is weird.
And I have to laugh because it's literally, we took the Saitama from One Punch Man and put him in not even remotely subtle Hogwarts. Just straight up, here's Dumbledore and Voldemort, their characters. I think we moved some syllables around. And the thing about Mashle is I haven't absorbed, and fewer listeners, you may not know this about me, but my brain just absorbs every character, every side character. I could index off 100 plus Naruto characters. No one in Mashle do I remember but Mashle himself, and maybe the fact that Dumbledore is there.
Oh, yeah. But it's a weekly series that I'm following because now I'm invested in it, but I think I'd probably give it 2.5 Exodia pieces.
Yeah, I'd give it 2. It's I'm following it, but mostly for the sake of completion at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And moving along with a bit of pace. So the big long-lasting ones right now in Shonen Jump are Black Clover, which is just Naruto with wizards, and One Piece. Mm-hmm. There's not enough time on Earth for us to go over either of those. Those are full episodes. So let's pivot along to Undead Unluck.
Undead Unluck had a lot of promise, but its premise has gotten too convoluted because of the negators. So the basic premise is that there's these negators who are trying to kill God, and God who's just trying to torture humans.
That tracks. Sure, for anime, that tracks.
And so to fight God, they receive quests from the Apocalypse book. And if they don't do enough quests in the Apocalypse book, then God adds a new rule to Earth to make people's lives more miserable. And I mean, it sounds super interesting, except that these negators, they negate certain rules, like the titular character Undead, he negates death, so you can't kill him. He's immortal. The other titular character, Unluck, I mean, I guess technically the way to describe it would be that she negates luck, but really, whenever she touches someone, she causes a stroke of bad luck.
Okay.
And the more that she loves the person, the worse the luck becomes.
It seems like an interesting premise, but you were wrapping up to why it only has one Exodia piece.
Well, because these negators' powers are so like weird, specifically convoluted, weird. Like just I said weird twice because it's incredibly hard to wrap your mind around what's actually happening. Like the latest plot arc, they fought Spring, which is an Uma, which is also some sort of rule of God. I don't know. Like I don't actually understand what I'm reading or why.
And with that, that's a beautiful line to wrap up this episode. A couple things we didn't hit are just things that we're not personally reading. Like I don't have thoughts on the Elusive Samurai. There's a series called Akiashi Triangle, which I'm pretty sure is just pornography. And there's Magu-chan, God of Destruction, which is an Eldritch horror buddy comedy that just simply did not have the content to last more than 2 chapters.
There's Kaiju number 8. That's another sort of Bleach.
Yeah.
Another Bleach plus Naruto, I guess, actually.
Yeah.
You would like to mash those two together.
Yeah, it's a good way to make easy money. And then, with that, let's wrap things up with our random questions of the week. And feel free to submit your random questions of the week for your chance to win a digital deluxe copy of The Waltz of Blades. So our first random question is really not that random because it's very on topic. But the question is this. For you, what typical cliche Shonen Jump power do you think I would have? And then I have to answer that for you.
Cliche Shonen Jump power do I think that you would have?
Yes.
Okay, well, I mean, like... Well, how... Like, eye powers are pretty cliche. Like... Essentially, like you like to say that you have a Sharingan on this ability to absorb knowledge, but it's surprisingly true. And like you would have some sort of eye-related power that lets you absorb information, for sure.
I love it. And as I've said before, your power is you're actually indestructible. Things that should kill you don't. Things that should poison you don't. Like, I'm pretty sure I could light you on fire and then kick you out in -50, and you'd just get up the next day. Like, your constitution is at... There's dwarven levels, and then there's like, yeah, I'm a dwarf with a +2 constitution belt with a con of 22 in the tough feat. Like, have you ever had a sick day?
Okay, so the store that I work at now, I've been working there for at least 7 years, and I've never called in sick. I think I went home early once because I felt so sick I was going to throw up, and everyone said I was too pale and I had to go home. But the next day I was fine, so
and with
it's all
that,
good.
Point proven. So on to our random dragon question. If you're allowed one of these things, what do you want? A dragon fang? A dragon claw? A dragon scale? What would you pick?
So like this. That's kind of a strange question. Like, well, like a dragon scale seems like it would be like. Is this just like a souvenir, or like?
I mean, that's up to how you answer the question.
Do I actually get dragon scales? Like, but, and I guess more to the point, I am definitely leaning towards dragon scale. Because it seems like the most useful material to do any sort of projects with, and could just be useful on its own as like a shield or something. Plus, scales give dragons their characteristic shimmer, so it'd probably look pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's a very solid answer. I respect it. I would go with the dragon fang for like Jurassic Park logic, that there's probably like some tasty DNA in there somewhere. So okay. I immediately, like, if I get a piece of a dragon, which of those 3 is the most clonable? And I don't know, like, I'm not a biologist, but I feel like the fang, like, if we're, like, swabbing people's noses to check things, like, I feel like a fang's got to have a lot of dragon on it.
Mm-hmm.
Where the claw might be contaminated a bit more. And the scale might be, like, dead skin, which I can't clone a dragon from dead skin. So, that was my logic. And if I can't do anything cool with it, awesome dragon fang sword or umbrella.
Ooh, Dragon Fang umbrella. That would be pretty cool.
Right? Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we hope to hear from you soon.
Yeah, thanks. And we have a stream that we do on Twitch. We also post on YouTube. For now, it's on Tuesdays. If you want to catch us live, we've been playing through SD Gundam Gashapon Wars, an obscure Japanese title that has an incredible amount of content and variety. So if you're interested in supporting us in other ways, you could tune in for that too. Besides that, I mean, have a great week, and we'll be here talking to each other for you to listen to next week. Bye.
Bye.